Hey there, students and teachers. Welcome to part 3, the third part of my video explaining the AP US History DBQ. And this final section is going to focus on the last 2 points dealing with evidence and understanding. So let's go ahead and take a look at the one rubric, which is available on my website. Uses at least one additional piece of specific historical evidence beyond that found in the documents relevant to an argument about the prompt. The response must describe the evidence and must use more than a phrase or reference. This additional piece of evidence must be different from the evidence used to earn the point for contextualization. So in order to get the outside evidence point, the student must produce one piece of specific evidence that 1. Supports the argument, 2. Is not used for contextualization, and 3. Is not found in the document. So specific, supports the argument, and is not found anywhere else in the essay, is not used for contextualization, is not found in the documents. It must be unique, it must be specific, and it must support the argument. It must be relevant. Now, with this prompt that we've been working with, dealing with the road to the American Revolution, you could use all kinds of outside evidence. You could use the Proclamation of 1763, the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, the Boston Tea Party, the Intolerable Acts, and common sense. In order to be safe, make sure you use multiple sentences. Don't short yourself on this one. Name dropping is not enough just to mention the Proclamation of 1763 or something like that. You need to make sure that you demonstrate that you know what it is you're talking about, that you are being very descriptive, and it's not just, hey, I remember this had something to do with it. You need to bring it in. You need to write a couple sentences noting the impact and the importance and making it clear that you understand what it is that you're saying. Here is an example of outside evidence. Let's say that I wanted to use the Boston Tea Party. The Sons of Liberty protested the Tea Act by dumping massive amounts of tea into the Boston Harbor in what is remembered as the Boston Tea Party. Parliament responded with the Coercive Acts, known in the colonies as the, quote, Intolerable Acts, which closed the port of Boston and instituted martial law. You see here where I'm not just mentioning something, I'm mentioning a whole thing here. Now, this may be a little overkill, but better overkill than underkill. Better to make sure that you get the point than to leave it in doubt whether you're going to get the point or not. So remember, when you employ outside evidence, make sure that it has substance, make sure it has depth, and make sure it is as specific as possible, and that it's really nowhere in the documents. There is going to be a gap anytime that you are looking at documents and doing a DBQ. So very important that you are looking for these gaps and you are filling them with outside evidence. Again, to be safe, you may want to consider using 2 pieces of outside evidence because you're required to explain one piece of outside evidence, but you may want to use 2 just to be on the safe side. You have to use 2 for the LEQ anyway, so you might as well be consistent and get used to it. You've got a little bit more time with this new setup for the DBQ. Now let's go into complex understanding. This point is the icing on the cake point. I'm going to speculate that a lot of people that get this point, most people who get this point are going to get this as the 7th point. They've earned all 6 of the points. Maybe they didn't use 6 documents argumentatively, perhaps. So I would say that people who are going to earn this point are going to score 6s and 7s by and large, because this is really, teachers say this is going to be the most difficult point to earn. And it's really tying everything together, kind of like the dude's rug, if anybody's seen The Big Lebowski. demonstrates a complex understanding of the historical development that is the focus of the prompt, using evidence to corroborate, qualify, or modify an argument that addresses the question. The response must demonstrate a complex understanding, which must be part of the argument and not merely a phrase or reference. You see this a lot. Remember that you're not earning points in general by phrases and references. This could include explaining nuance by analyzing multiple variables, explaining both similarity and difference, both continuity and change, or multiple causes, or both causes and effects. Now, this one is going to apply more to the LEQ than the DBQ, but possibly on the DBQ as well. Explaining relevant and insightful connections within and across periods. Now, this is kind of a Trojan horse for what used to be known as synthesis. This is something that used to be required, that a student go outside of the time and place and tie it into a larger picture. If you employ this well, you could use synthesis, assuming it's done right, it looks like, to get this point. Confirming the validity of an argument by corroborating multiple perspectives across themes. Now, corroboration, that is, for example, if you have been accused of a crime and you are presenting an alibi, you would want someone to corroborate your story to show that you were not in the place at the time that the crime was committed. So corroboration is where we get multiple documents and we use them to strengthen each other as evidence. Now, we can also use documents to contradict, as it was saying, to corroborate, qualify, or modify an argument. So the next thing here, qualifying or modifying an argument by considering diverse or alternative views or evidence. Lots of stuff here. You don't have to do all of this stuff. You really just have to do some of it, maybe possibly just one of these well. Now, of course, this is kind of a new thing. We'll have more clarity when there's another AP reading, summer of 2018, but let me see if I can go ahead and tackle this. So, demonstrate an understanding of nuance, that you see some of the complexities here, all right? Complex understanding. You're not just taking everything at face value. You're not taking everything as simple. You are making some notes showing that there is a bigger picture out there. 2, make deep historical connections. 3, put documents in conversation, noting corroboration and contradiction. 4, connect across time and place. And 5, put forward alternative viewpoints. Now, those are 5 things that you could do here, but what I would urge students and teachers to do is to focus. Okay, let's go ahead and focus this. There we go. It's a bit more clear. If we focus on 1 or 2 of these things, okay, so I'm going to decide in advance how my students will earn this point, how I'm going to teach it. And what I think is going to be the best thing for the DBQ is to put documents in conversation, noting corroboration and contradiction. And I've got a method for doing this. At my 8-month writing clinic, I go very deep into this. I also have some free materials online where I'm going to go into this deeper as far as using documents together and not using the documents in isolation, and noting how different perspectives are employed. This is stuff you're already doing when you explain the documents using HIP analysis or POV SAP, whatever we're going to call it. But this is going to be what I'm going to focus on when I teach the DBQ this year. So, for example, document 5, an engraving by Paul Revere, 1770. I'd already noted how Paul Revere was a member of the Sons of Liberty. He was somebody who did not have a high opinion of the British troops in the colony. So we've already identified document 5 as propaganda. Now, document 4, a statement by Captain Thomas Preston, British officer, March 1770. So Captain Preston's account of the Boston Massacre is going to be a lot different. On Monday night, about 8 o'clock, 2 soldiers were attacked and beat. But the party of the townspeople, in order to carry matters to the utmost length, broke into 2 meeting houses and rang the alarm bells, which I suppose was for fire as usual, but was soon undeceived. About 9, some of the guard came to and informed me the town inhabitants were assembling to attack the troops. and that the bells were ringing as a signal for that purpose and not for fire, and the beacon intended to be fired to bring in the distant people of the country. This, as I was captain of the day, occasioned my repairing immediately to the main guard. In my way there, I saw the people in great commotion, and heard them use the most cruel and horrid threats against the troops. In a few minutes after I reached the guard, about 100 people passed it and went towards the custom house where the king's money is lodged. They immediately surrounded the sentry posted there, and with clubs and other weapons threatened to execute their vengeance on him. I was soon informed by the townsmen their intention was to carry off the soldier from his post and probably murder him. Now, when I'm going for complex understanding, I'm looking at something like this that shows people defenseless. You see these British soldiers all lined up. You see that the captain is ordering soldiers to fire, and this crowd looks so innocent, so beaten, so massacred. You see the butcher's hall in the background there. And so these two sources give me a completely different picture of what happened. So how am I going to use these to reconstruct the event and demonstrate a complex understanding? I would do it something like this. While Paul Revere's engraving implicated the British troops as murderers, Captain Thomas Preston, the British officer in charge, told of unruly colonists who were harassing British soldiers and threatening violence. According to Preston, the British soldiers had reason to fear for their lives. While Preston could have been covering for his men and trying to avoid conviction, there is likely something to his story, since the officers involved in the so-called massacre were acquitted by a Boston jury. Now, what I've done here to demonstrate complex understanding is to put the two documents in conversation with each other, to note the perspectives of both documents. I'd already noted Paul Revere's perspective, and now I'm noting Thomas Preston's perspective in comparison to that. And then finally, I'm making a note, I'm bringing in a little bit of outside knowledge, noting that the soldiers involved in the Boston Massacre were acquitted by the jury. And so with this, by using a combination of putting the documents in conversation, doing a comparative analysis of the documents to explain the different perspectives, and even bringing in a little bit of additional outside information to add additional color and clarity, then I'm demonstrating a complex understanding. Now, then again, might be doing a little overkill here, but for this point, you want to make sure that throughout your essay, the complexity is there. I really think that this point, in a lot of cases, is not going to be awarded based on one thing, but how the essay is structured by and large. And that's why I believe that putting the essay, organizing it into 3 arguments, 3 main points, and presenting it like that is really going to get this complex understanding point just by default. You're writing an excellent essay, an essay that is just excellent throughout and demonstrates complex understanding. Now, of course, this point is not for everyone. As I noted earlier, teachers generally agree that the complex understanding point is the most difficult to earn. Only the most advanced students will earn this point. So not everybody's going to score 7 points, and that is okay. There are people who will make a 5 on the exam without writing a 7-point DBQ. But then again, if you're interested in writing a 7-point DBQ, take a look at the TomRitchie.net 8-month writing clinic, because I'm going to go in depth. I'm going to provide other materials that aren't available to the public. I'm also going to be going through and showing you how it is that I organize DBQs and write them and get these points, and putting my experience as an AP reader to work here. So please check that out. And if you're not interested in that, keep watching my other videos. I've got all kinds of stuff out there for you to try to help you get ready for the AP US History exam. It's always a pleasure.